Welcome back to Moments with Maeve, and today we're going to talk about my path to finding peace and kind of all of the mental shifts and the energetics that have shifted since doing that. And you're probably sitting there wondering, like, I try all the things, or I go to yoga, I listen to the podcast about positive thinking, and I got a good night's sleep. So why am I continuing to experience anxiety or thoughts about the past, or you're fixating on things, or just in general feeling uneasy in your own body or in your life? So this is going to super resonate with those of you who feel like you've tried everything, especially conventional methods, and you haven't seen it work yet. I know what that's like. I honestly do. I also grew up in traditional Western culture, and even as a therapist, I saw the immense lack of diversity in kind of the ancient teachings and all of the interventions that we use. So let's dive into it, and you can get those nuggets here from me now. I remember the first time that I questioned my degree in therapy. It was in those first 2 years that I was becoming a therapist. And in those first 2 years after you graduate from your master's program, it's 2 years of training under somebody else's license, right? And so you're getting lots of supervision, lots of guidance and all this. And I remember going to my supervisor and being like, I just want like a box of tools, right? Like a toolbox kit that I can just use and know what to give and know what to, know exactly the thing that that client might need, right? And it just, it sounds like a good idea even still, but it's not that way. I learned that peace is not a mental thing. There's some ways that we need to discipline our mind, and I think that will happen when we go through things that I'm going to tell you now without it being like a mental effort. Like if we were to have already found peace by our analytical mind, we would have. I know that if you're anything like me or many of the people I talk to, and because you're listening to this and you've tried all those other things, all the logical things, the things that they say is gonna work, then yes, I know they don't work, right? Let me know in the comments if that's how it feels to you. So because it's not a mental thing, then the only other option is really to go into the body. Now, this is a huge shift in our culture, and I think consciousness, or collective consciousness. And while it's outside of the scope for this video to go into the embodiment of wisdom, I obviously do it in a lot of my other videos, so be sure to click through and see what resonates. So the first time I really was like, this is not working. I was just like late at night, I would work until like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Seeing clients all day. It was a very high stress job, really interfacing with people and their trauma all day long. And I'm an introvert. Very hard for me to keep up my own stamina and my own clarity and my own body wisdom when I was being inundated with that. And so I started suffering in ways in my own mental health that I hadn't before. And they call this vicarious trauma. And now on an energetic level, I know and understand it so much more, especially being intuitives and empaths, right? We absorb. So it's okay if you don't want to sit in the presence of other people's pain. That's not the same thing as not having empathy, but just because you have extra abilities to sense and heal and be present with doesn't mean that you're like this doormat for other people's unprocessed trauma. Let me know if you needed that. So I was driving home, and beautiful sunsets. It was a beautiful drive through the country, and I was listening to Eckhart Tolle and Muji at the time, and those were the first people that I really introduced me to this kind of alternative realm of spirituality and consciousness. And it's also about that time that I found like conscious musicians like Nako, Medicine for the People, or Trevor Hall. And I'll give you some more, maybe I'll go over an updated list sometime. Really resonated with those teachings because I realized that so much of what we're taught in this Western world from the mental realm of just is actually just suppression of our truth. And that's never going to bring you peace. It never works. We aren't going to be able to find our own peace if we're constantly suppressing. So you know when people are like, oh, you just have to focus, or like if you don't want it bad enough, then you don't got it, or you're not like you have to want it bad enough. That's true. However, if you're operating from these unconscious programs, if you're not acknowledging what's under the surface in the shadow realms or in the unconscious mind that's trying to be expressed, then that's where like panic attacks, nightmares, all of these repressed these symptoms arise, because you're repressing and suppressing, and that's not healing. Stay high vibe, or just go to yoga 5 times, or just like cancel culture, just get rid of the people that you don't resonate with. Like, these are all avoidance tactics, not actually integration and cohabitating and living with the expression of our own humanity. And when we project this rejection of emotion and rejection of the human experience on other people, we are certainly 100,000% doing it to ourselves first. So it's always the inner work, and I'm so glad you're here with me to do that. The first shift I realized when I actually began to experience more peace, like not just like you're forcing it, like you're trying to sit and meditate and you're like, okay, yeah, this is peaceful, but really it's not, because you still can't get a hold of the mental thoughts. It's not like this forced peace. It was actually like, oh wow, I made it. This is nice. I feel at peace with what's happening, or with my life, or just in this moment. This comes through a shift of learning from presence, not pain. What do I mean by that? So a lot of people, they're in a situation and the first thing they do is they're either like mentally trying to dissociate, and they may do that by intellectualizing or fantasizing or focusing on like something else that's outside of whatever's happening in that moment. It's a way to avoid that experience, right? And when we do that, we're obviously suppressing the real emotion that's happening. We don't trust ourselves to experience that situation. You know, it's like if you're going to go through a difficult thing, or if something is uncomfortable, you'd be willing to go through it if you knew you could come out on the other side. And so there's also this confidence piece. So a lot of people will like dissociate. They'll be like, oh, that's not really what's happening. I don't want to look at this. And it's all very unconscious, right? And then also romanticizing, like if this person in front of you, you're like, yeah, this doesn't really feel great, but they got lots of money, and then I could do this with that. I could buy extra massages. But what is a few hundred massages if your nervous system is wrecked all of the time, right? You're not going to find peace by being with the wrong person or in the wrong situation. However, you won't know that it's the wrong thing if you're not willing to stay present with it, and then honor what arises, and then make decisions based off of that. I think a lot of times we don't want to stay present with it because we don't want to then make the decision to either leave it, or to stand up for ourselves, or to advocate for ourselves. Like say you were in a business meeting, right? And somebody cut you off. It may feel more uncomfortable to you to be like, oh, excuse me, I wasn't finished. I was actually saying this. And to assert your boundaries, your space, and your respect in that meeting. If you knew the confidence within yourself to do that, it would be no problem. But if you are shying away from your own inner authority, then that experience is going to come with a flood of additional emotions, past experiences, right? This floodgate opens, and then now you're not only processing maybe the discomfort or that situation itself, you're processing years of discomfort in a similar situations. So that's another reason why we all know suppression doesn't work. It's bubbling up, it's spilling out in all these other ways. So we'll get to the what to do instead. But just remember, peace comes from presence and staying present. And this really comes with being authentic to who you are and trusting that you deserve to be authentically seen, held, and witnessed in these experiences. This allows you to go with the flow of life. It allows you to be in life, not resisting it. In my esoteric women stuff, this is like the life cycle, you know? If we can't see the depth of things, then we won't see the life of them either. Like there are endless new beginnings and endings and this constant cycle that's happening. And when we block that and put like, oh, I don't want to do that, I don't want to see it like this, I don't want to experience that, we are putting all of these like dams in the river, and then we're at the end of the river saying like, why am I so dried up? Why am I not receiving any abundance? Where did all of my water, where did all my resources go? We have to go back and see where that suppression or those dams have been placed and remove them in time. And that will give you an inner sense, or it did for me. It really gave me this inner sense of peace because I knew that I was aligned. And I really learned that when I started being authentic with myself as somebody who really liked to be a perfectionist, who liked to perform, who liked to be the good one, the right one, the one that did everything perfectly so that I didn't get the heat on my back. People enjoyed me. And I even did this as a therapist. You know, I was a really good therapist. At least that's what I was told, and that's what I believed at the time. And it's been a few years since I was working as a traditional therapist. And I have really learned that my clients liked me because I was super empathetic and super emotionally supportive, that doesn't always translate into a good therapist, right? Because then you collude with them, you invest in the client, and I would still deliver them insights, but I didn't kind of dredge that up for them to do, you know, like I didn't set the stage for them to create the insights and take full responsibility over their lives. And then my boss would be like, oh, you're just so great, you're like a high performer, we just love you, right? And all the while I was dying inside because I was experiencing vicarious trauma and I was not getting my own balance and needs met within my own cycle and life, and just that's another video for another time. But when I started unraveling where my peace lies, because I was like, why, you know, I'm doing good work in the world, but I don't feel peace. It's because I put myself in stressful situations. I would romanticize these situations and be like, oh no, I can handle it. And then I wasn't seeing them for what they really were, and I was suppressing the actual physiological experience I was having in those situations. The last piece about this I want you to know is that you don't have to learn from pain. Like, don't wait for a crisis to happen before you gather insights. Being in presence and being peaceful because you're not performing, you're not being a perfectionist, you're actually learning to be authentically seen. There is a little bit of time where that is going to feel a little awkward. It's going to feel obviously a lot really vulnerable, but it will bring a peace because we feel peace when we're aligned to our soul. We feel peace when we feel like we've exerted our life force and our essence out into the world that day. There's these other kind of energetic things happening, even if maybe we're not, you know, we still see the path ahead is a bit longer than maybe we want it to be, but we still feel satisfied with our work for the day. That's peace. We can go to bed peaceful that night. We didn't suppress, oh, I should have uploaded this idea, or I should have put this idea into action, but I didn't because I didn't believe in myself, right? And that's suppression. So being in presence and moving through presence instead of pain, which also is a great motivator, but it's going to be painful. And oftentimes when we create from pain, it's going to create things that are not aligned for us down the road, right? We're moving out of fear, and instead of moving from clarity and vision and our own excitement about whatever it is that you want to do. So the caveat here, as you can see, is like we have to be willing to tolerate a little bit of what we want to avoid in order to experience the peace. And that can be true for a lot of people who've experienced, a lifetime of trauma or are stuck in trauma cycles, is increasing their tolerance window and not closing down so much that we're only able to tolerate like this minute little thing happening, right? Like if people say things the wrong way, or if this happens out in the world, or if my boss does this, or if the job looks like this, right? The tolerance window is so small that that person doesn't feel safe in most any situations. And that's a sign that you're stuck in the trauma loop. And you're not experiencing peace when you start shutting out the world. That's a sign that you're going in the opposite direction. I know it feels like you're going to experience peace. But we're really armoring up. We are putting ourselves in the cage and then pretending like that's safety and security. But then we lose life. We lose out on life. When we numb our bad, sad, icky emotions, we also numb the happy, exciting, joyful ones. So really it's about embracing all of life and the death life cycles instead of avoiding pain at all costs or waiting for a crisis before we just decide what's aligned for us. And there's so much to learn. Like when you choose yourself, you get to learn so much more lessons, right? Because we are like, oh, this is what it feels like to stand up for myself. And I used to think this, but I didn't experience that. And you just start gathering insights, and the insights come flowing in when you step beyond your comfort zone. You're not doing this in a stuck loop and running through anxiety and ruminating and the shoulda, wouldas, right? Lessons do come up because you did something new or because you are staying in presence. You're just looking at it with curiosity. You're just like, oh, I see what's here. And compassion. Oh, let me see what's here. Maybe it's a gift that you have to imagine opening this gift and being like, oh, what's in here? What do I still need to learn about myself? What skill am I building right now? What can I let go of? And these are the questions that help bring us forward and actually integrate lessons instead of just pretending like we're okay. And therefore, we can actually be at peace, when we relate to ourselves with peace instead of avoidance. The second caveat to this that really helped me understand, and it was a hard one. I didn't want to admit this to myself. So I'll be honest about that. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? But I didn't want, so the last thing I want to say about this, about learning from presence, not pain, is this, that you and we are now upgrading our identity from saying, I'm a survivor. Oh, I'm really good at adapting. I'm really good at facing adversity. I'm really good at problem solving. No, we're done saying those things. Instead, because if there's a problem to solve, that means you have to be engaging with problems. Is that peaceful for you? Do you really want to do that? Or is that just your identity that's used to solving problems? Instead, I'm saying, I'm here to thrive in life. I am thriving in life. I deserve this peace. I deserve to feel peaceful. I deserve to walk away from things that are inherently and truly toxic. I don't avoid what still has lessons for me, but now that I'm learning to be secure in who I am, I'm also not entertaining the chaos anymore. I give people a chance. I show up as myself. I set my boundaries, and I love who I am. And when people can't celebrate or enhance my life, and I can't enhance theirs, and they can't reciprocate this energy and this authenticity and this abundance and this presence, then I choose not to be with them. I choose to take myself out of those situations because I deserve peace. Let me know how it goes.